It's really interesting seeing how things have changed over the past couple of years. I went from being a huge advocate for FromSlop, genuinely appreciating the fact that they were pushing out games that people genuinely enjoyed, that weren't cutscene driven, that did have lesser quality graphics, that were gameplay first. I was very supportive of FromSlop back in the Dark Souls days, right? I wanted them to do well. I wanted people to enjoy their games. I wanted like them to do their thing, and I was at that time also very critical of Monolith Soft because I felt that Xenoblade Chronicles was a huge disappointment, the worst of the Operation Rainfall games, an extremely overhyped title on the Wii. I still feel as if like that initial assessment was correct. At the time, Dark Souls was something very innovative, very different, something that understood in a lot of ways it was a trendsetter because it kind of brought an end to like the casualization of video games that we were going through in the 2000s. So Dark Souls like really proved that there was an audience for like more traditional video games, and for that was like a very big thing at the time. But you have to understand about trends, about games, about things that like make certain things popular. Like that doesn't necessarily mean it's good, right? And I do think that considering just what FromSoft has done over the past decade, rehash the same general concept, making it worse and worse, casualizing it. FromSoft has indeed fallen off. And if you're a younger player, if you're someone who didn't grow up with Dark Souls or play it when it first came out, like you will understand, you cannot understand just how much of a regression something like Elden Ring actually is. There's no innovation, there's no growth, there's no change. It's the same exact thing that we've always gotten. And meanwhile, Monolith Soft has actually grown and evolved, not only with like recent titles, but even as recently as the direct follow-up to Xenoblade Chronicles, Xenoblade Chronicles X, which at the time was written off as just being like some Wii U game, but even today, 10 years later in 2025, the game is extremely cutting edge, incredibly ambitious, really showcases the studio's unique strengths, and really proved that Nintendo was far and beyond what other studios were doing. Like this was an open world RPG that stopped other open world RPGs. The fact that Nintendo could make a game bigger than Skyrim on such a shoestring budget should be a testament to just how far ahead of the rest of the industry they actually are. But like the cope at the time was that Xenoblade wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't a relevant IP. Nintendo would drop it eventually, and all of that completely fell apart with like the release of 2. It became the best-selling game in the series. It was a huge success story. Like I in a lot of ways I feel like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was the kickstart of like people beginning to realize that like Japanese RPGs were better on Nintendo consoles than other platforms, right? Like Nintendo killed it with Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And they also made Xenoblade Chronicles 3, a game that was so radically different that it put a lot of people off, but eventually, once I actually beat it, I realized it was an actual masterpiece. So like the thing about like Xenoblade Chronicles versus FromSlop is that Monolith actually improved. They actually made changes. They actually made radically different games with similar overarching gameplay mechanics and themes, with wildly different characters, with like wildly different environments and tones, right? They did a lot to evolve from like the original Xenoblade Chronicles. Whereas FromSlop has just been doing the same tired thing over and over again to the point where like Elden Ring's plot feels like a rehash of Dark Souls. Like, ooh, you're a guy, you're a tarnished chosen undead who has to fight all of these strong figures. Like it's just like it's the same thing. Okay, there's no innovation, there's no growth, there's no change. Even like being open world showcases just how limited these games actually are. Like it's just shocking comparing like the level of detail and visual quality of Xenoblade to something like Elden Ring, because Xenoblade does indeed look way better. It has way more memorable characters, way better fighting cinematography in the cutscenes, better better environments in general. Like Xenoblade just stomps FromSlop in every single way, shape, and form. And I think that is going to continue as Monolith Soft continues to expand and continues to demonstrate their unique capabilities in a wide range of Nintendo franchises. It's widely known that they greatly contributed to the success of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and I imagine it's only a matter of time that they bring their talents to other Nintendo studios, right? Like they are not simply going to be content with Xenoblade Chronicles. They are going to start innovating and doing more things with other Nintendo properties and perhaps eventually making their own. And that is an extremely exciting thing. Fans understand the potential that Monolith has exhibited over the past decade. FromSlop, in comparison, is coasting along on their reputation. It feels like they're in the same position that Final Fantasy was in the 2000s, where people can't bring themselves to admit that the dream is dead, that everyone is gone, that they haven't produced anything of value in years, right? But oh, it's Final Fantasy; it's gonna do well no matter what, and that's led to where we are now, where Square Enix is like a shell of its former self and a joke of a company, right? That is the current state of the Western gaming industry, of FromSlop. Like they cannot keep up what they're doing because new players wouldn't be interested and old players would get angry at them for like changing up the established formula, right? They simply don't have the talent to do anything other than what they've been doing for the past decade. They essentially jumped on a trend before it was popular and like popularized it, but it was a lucky accident. It wasn't because of like actual skill or talent or because they're such savant developers. They were just at the right place at the right time and made a hit. And there's something wrong with that, right? No one can take away their success from them, but at the same time, they aren't going to remain competitive with actual high quality developers that can do better than what they do without even really trying. And I think this is why FromSlop and other studios like them are doomed to fail.